Hey everybody, it's your friend and your guy and your favorite YouTuber who's always wrong about everything, Gardiner, the Linux gamer. This video would not be possible if it weren't for the support of my 140 amazing patrons over on Patreon, without whom I could not do this. I want to give a special shout out to Mitchell Valentino. Mitchell, my dude, thank you so much. Your support is truly amazing. So there was a thing going on Twitter the other day, and I'm not a big fan of Twitter. I like to tweet every once in a while, but I'm not a huge fan of how Twitter works. And so I ended up coming across this trend on Twitter about posting your most controversial something or other, right? There is like a meme template, but for tweets. And so I ended up doing that. And the funny thing is, when I saw this originally happening, I saw Popey blocking that phrase before I even saw anyone else use the phrase. And the phrase is, please quote this tweet with your most controversial whatever opinion. So I tweeted out, please quote this tweet with your most controversial Linux and FOSS opinions. And immediately I was enlightened by multiple people's opinions. And I should have figured out before I even tweeted this that leaving this kind of open invitation for toxicity might end up not really going in my favor. But actually, most people were more or less pretty decent human beings, which I've come to expect from the people who watch this show. I don't have room in my life for terrible people, and so the fact that most of the people who left their controversial opinion were actually not terrible people, you know what? You all deserve a high five for that. So I wanted to go over some of the more interesting controversial tweets, controversial opinions that people have about Linux, because I figure it's good to talk about these kind of things and see where everybody else's stance on this is. The first tweet that I wanted to talk about is Chris Titus Tech. Chris Titus Tech on Twitter. He's a cool dude. He's got a YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it, there's going to be, I think, probably a link up here in the corner, actually. Chris Titus Tech says, distributions don't matter. I think that as long as you have the packages that you need, distributions don't matter. That's why I don't really do a lot of distribution reviews on the channel. However, I feel like he's correct only so far. There are some distributions that are doing very interesting and innovative things. Pop! OS, especially after meeting with the people that are developing it, they're doing some very interesting stuff with Pop! OS. They're creating new ways to interact with GNOME, which is fascinating to me. They're also updating their packages at a much faster clip than Debian stable or unstable or Ubuntu even. That's pretty impressive. I feel like the only place that distributions really make that much of a difference is how you like your packages. And I've said this before, I personally like to have my packages up to date as they can be. Bleeding edge. I want things to break on me. And that's why I use Manjaro, because I don't have the time or the patience to install Arch from Atom. And so Manjaro is pretty decent. There are some issues that I have with Manjaro, which I could talk about some other time, but I really think that at this point, the differences between distributions are growing ever smaller. And as Really Evil Rob pointed out, Chris, that's not your most controversial statement. So I've seen a couple people share the same sentiment here. Netley on Twitter says, Adobe coming to Linux as closed source software makes sense. And you know what? I think that does make sense. I don't think that that's a particularly controversial statement, actually. For the most part, I find that Adobe products and Microsoft Office are really the two big holdbacks, right? And with Office 365, where I'm pretty sure you can use it in your web browser now, that's not that big of an issue anymore. So yeah, I mean, I think that it makes sense to have Adobe products coming to Linux. Dan Mercer on Twitter says, why bother with forked distributions when you can go straight to the source? Debian and Arch are the rings to rule them all. Debian, my precious. Gollum. Yeah, so that's a great question, and I guess I'll talk about that. So For me, it's all about convenience, right? Debian is a little bit inconvenient, and so is Arch. I just find that I like to have an ISO that I can download and run the installer, and it takes less than 20 minutes to install the whole thing on my system. And I've encountered issues with more recent Manjaro ISOs, and that kind of bothers me. I just want a distribution that I can slap on a USB stick, plug it into a computer that I want to reinstall the operating system on, and click, 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 and be done. I don't want to like have to reconfigure everything or customize stuff. I just want stuff to work completely out of the box, 100% the way I like it. And for the most part, I prefer everything to be stock. I don't want to like go in and change settings and mess around. Like, that's not how I work. I prefer the convenience and the simplicity of having a distribution that is just the way I like it once it's installed. And there are some problems with Manjaro with GNOME. Like, they have a bunch of extensions that I don't like, and that can be a bit of a hassle. There's also a bunch of stuff that's pre-installed on Manjaro that I'm not a big fan of, but I haven't found another distribution that I find more convenient. Also, Manjaro does not play nicely with my Vega 64 at installation. It kind of will hang sometimes. Never had that problem with Nvidia before. But with all that being said, if Debian or Arch work the way you want them to, or you enjoy customizing your distributions during your installation process or after, you know, more power to you. That's what Linux is all about. It's about having choice. I choose to have a more convenient means of installation and customization. I just don't care about customization that much. I want things to just work out of the box. So Burlog says, social justice ideology is a cancer killing open source and FOSS. Not a particularly helpful critique. A much more helpful critique that shares maybe a bit of a similar sentiment is from Tunbridge P. Tunbridge P says, this is pretty controversial. The amount of politicizing in FOSS is reaching dangerous levels. If I get a pull request, the old method would be to assess the code and accept or reject it. The new method seems to involve going over that person's history and looking at politics. Bad. So I'm more inclined to agree with the latter statement. Most of the time when someone says social justice or SJW or whatever, they're not actually trying to share a high-level critique of a concept. What they're trying to do is automatically win an argument with their choir, right? You know, you've heard the term preaching to the choir. It's the same thing. You have these different communities. You have the people who are accused of being SJWs, and you have the other guys. I don't know what the opposite of an SJW is, but you have these people who really only use that term as a shorthand to try and win an argument, but they're not actually arguing with anyone. They're just trying to like make their friends think, oh yeah, he won, right? They're online internet buddies. I don't find that to be a particularly useful endeavor in my online life. I try to stay clear of that kind of stuff. So if you ever see someone using terms like SJW or whatever terms, like these memes, they're terrible memes is what they are. And I just have no place for that in my life. In terms of politics kind of infecting free and open source software, that's kind of a reality that we face. Politics really is kind of an all-encompassing thing, and that kind of sucks. If you made it this far in the video, you can hit that like button. It really helps the show out. You can also hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with what's going on the channel. If you don't like YouTube, and there are many reasons to not like YouTube, you can head over to lbry.tv/@thelinuxgamer. Subscribe to the channel over there. It's a pretty awesome site. It's a completely open and distributed open source alternative to YouTube. It's pretty sweet. So EG, or at EGIRL, says, the Linux and FOSS communities are more elitist and intolerant than ever before. I wanted to get to the heart of what he was asking, so I said, I'm not saying that I disagree. I'm just curious what you base this on. He said that mostly just anecdotes and how incredibly toxic our Linux has become, talking about Reddit. And he said, I also got a surprising amount of hate when I started using the EG Fursona as my YouTube profile picture. To say that our Linux is a representation of the Linux community as a whole, I would say that that's probably not accurate. I don't use Reddit anymore because Reddit itself has become a toxic cesspool. When Reddit stopped being about sharing links and having a community and became more social media oriented, where it was all about likes and karma and engagement. You know, engagement really is the yardstick by which we are measuring the fall of civilization. Engagement only promotes the most controversial and the most destructive tendencies of humanity. And so for me, I stopped using Reddit because Reddit itself became toxic. I have no interest in being around toxic stuff. And so when you have a moderation team, and I'm not talking about the R Linux moderation team, I'm talking about any community that doesn't regulate itself. If you have moderators or companies that control these platforms that are not exercising their authority to regulate the conversation and uplift everybody and move the conversation in a positive and at least constructive direction, then you're just going to end up with toxic people and only attract toxic people. And so that's the problem with Reddit. I would say, from my personal anecdotal evidence, that I believe that the Linux community is heading in the right direction. I'm not talking about the code of conduct or anything like that. I'm just talking about where I started in the Linux community, where the Linux community was when I started using Linux. We are in a much better place now. And truthfully, I think we are heading in the right direction. And as far as the Fursona thing that you mentioned on YouTube, you know, I think that you're going to encounter closed-minded bigots no matter where you are, inside or outside of the Linux community. And I'm sorry that you experienced that, my friend. So I saw multiple people saying that fragmentation is a good thing, and I saw approximately the same number of people say that fragmentation is destroying the community. Personally, I think that the concept of fragmentation isn't a super helpful one. I find that ideas are tools that human beings use to understand the world and address problems. And I feel like there are many ideas that aren't very useful as tools and so should be done away with. The idea of fragmentation is not a useful one. Everyone has a specific use case for their computer, or many use cases for the computers that they have in their lives. I feel like a lot of people, when they create a distribution, are trying to address the problems that they themselves face. And one of the amazing things about Linux is that you have this ready-made system that you can just quickly modify and distribute. I don't see how that could be a problem. That is part of the strength of Linux, in my opinion. The strength of open source software is that you can take an existing piece of software that is freely licensed and you can use it for whatever purposes you want. You can modify it, you can update it, you can change it, and then redistribute it to your friends. That's the strength of Linux. And anyone who says otherwise, I think, is wrong. I saw several people say that Linux will never become mainstream as a desktop operating system, and I'm gonna have to disagree with this one. I think that the opportunities for desktop Linux adoption are only expanding. I see like updates to Windows 10 coming out, and I see how those updates that break things and delete stuff are ratcheting up the frustration in the PC world, and I don't see any alternative to the constant cycle of abuse from Microsoft as anything but a good thing for us. I think that the Linux community is slowly growing, and I think that we are going to approach critical mass within the next couple of years, and adoption will increase. I'm not going to put out numbers or anything like that. I'm not going to place bets on this, but yeah, I think that critical mass will be hit within a couple of years, and we'll see much faster growth than we ever have in the desktop Linux space. Jonathan Carter says that it appears I've run out of clickbait titles. Well, if you look like right down here, you'll see that I actually, yeah, I have run out of clickbait titles. I needed this one to get me over that threshold. Jacob Prosser says that Firefox is spyware. Jacob, what? I was talking about, I'm talking about controversial statements, not baseless and made up statements. And the Farron OS dev on Twitter says, Plasma is mostly better than GNOME in terms of user experience and design. No. If you're talking about like the fluidity of the experience and how performant KDE Plasma is, then you might have a point in terms of user experience. But user experience and design, no. My last experience with Plasma was early this year. I tried to use it for a couple weeks because, you know, everybody was telling me that it was better. But I will take the slight performance cut from GNOME in favor of the actual like usability of the interface. See, my problem with Plasma is that there are probably, I don't know, I'm just going to throw out a number, but this is how it feels. There are probably 250 unique, bespoke user interface widgets in KDE, in Plasma, whatever you call it. There's no consistency. If you go through the settings panel in KDE, nothing makes sense. There's 14 different design paradigms used in the same freaking application. It doesn't make sense. KDE just feels like a hodgepodge. There's no like consistency in the design. And so earlier this year I used KDE and I honestly could not. I can't do it. Maybe I'll make a video about it and talk about why I can't stand KDE's design language. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you would like to see that, let me know in the comments because I'd make that. That'd be a good video. So after I finished recording this video, Jason Evangelo quote tweeted me and said, Linux needs better marketing. He also said that it's okay to use commercial software. I just wanted to talk about the first one really fast because yes, Linux does need better marketing. Linux marketing, as it stands right now, is not the greatest. There are a couple companies that do it well, but I think that overall, the Linux community in general doesn't know how to appeal to the general, like the broad audience. So Jason is absolutely right about that. I feel like because the Linux community is so decentralized that we really need people like Jason or Brian or Chris or myself, even people who are personalities who can speak, not really on behalf of, but can promote Linux as an idea, free and open source software as an idea, and it's very important. But yes, I would agree that there should be better marketing when it comes to Linux in general. And we're not just talking about like those Linux commercials from IBM from the 90s that were weird and had like a creepy little kid. Like we need real, like a coherent marketing strategy to bring more people on board to the awesome philosophies and way of life that is free software. Well, I think that's going to do it for this video. If you like this video, let me know. I want to know what your most controversial false belief is. Let me know down in the comments. And if you're going to leave a comment below, keep it lighthearted and fun. There's no toxicity and there's no fighting in my comment section. There's also no swearing, with rare exception. So yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. If you believe in the work that I do, you can support this show with a monthly contribution over on Patreon. You can also pick up a t-shirt. There's a link in the description. But no matter what you do, whether you hit that like button or share this video with your friends, don't forget to subscribe to see more from me, the Linux Gamer. And as always, thanks for watching.